Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for this new tutorial for you guys I have for you today. We are going to be going through Adobe Lightroom, which is a really great tool for photographers, digital artists. As always, if you like the videos I'm dropping, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and ring that notification bell so you can get notified every time I drop new content. So we're going to get started today. To add photos into Lightroom, there are two ways: the blue add photos, or you can browse through the file. You can also drag and drop. So I'm going to go through some of my photos that I have just quickly so that I can pick one out so I can show you the different tools in Adobe Lightroom. As you can see, I have a ton of landscape photos. It's one of the things I like to do, especially when I'm on vacation. So I'm just going to go through and pick one of these sunrise photos. So once you've chosen the photo you want, you're actually going to select Review for Import, and this is going to pull up all of the photos that you're importing. You may only be importing one, and that's okay, but it's now in your library. Once the photo's in your library, you can start using the tools. So we're going to start with the first tool, which is the filters. One of the great things with Adobe Lightroom is there are presets that come with Adobe Lightroom. So if you don't have a lot of time to play with all the different settings, you can come over here to the presets, and they have things for portraits, different styles, different subjects. So we do have the landscape one, but I'll also show you. So Cinematic 2 is another one that's really cool. And one thing I like with Lightroom is that it will actually show you the different changes that the presets will do before you click on it. So when you hover, it shows you in real time what will happen. So this is really great, especially if you use the Lightroom mobile app. If you're on the go editing photos, or even on your laptop on the train, but you don't have a lot of time, or you don't have a wireless mouse with you, you can do that. This other tool that's great is Recommended. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to analyze your photo and tell you what presets, not only from Adobe, but also those presets that are created by other Adobe Lightroom users and other Adobe users from the community. So it's a way that you can also learn what other photographers are doing with Lightroom as well, because they can actually, with presets that they create and save, they can share them to the community. So just like the other presets, when you hover over the recommended presets from Adobe or the community, it will edit the photos in real time. Also, when you click on the preset, it'll show you what settings are changed, and if you hover, it'll show you who from the community has made that preset. I personally like to edit the different levels of the photo myself instead of using presets, but I will use presets in a pinch. If you don't like anything you've done, as always, you can click Control Z. In the edit filters, we have different profiles. We have color, monochrome. There are also auto and black and white settings. So this is where if you click auto, it will change the settings to match that. And same thing with black and white, it'll change it to be a black and white photo. Under light, we have things like exposure, contrast, whites, blacks, color balance. We have the white balance, where you can select to have the white balance as shot, auto, or change it yourself. And then there are other things like effects, where you can work on the texture or the clarity if you want to add a vignette. The detail is if you want to sharpen, so if any part of your photo is darker. Then we have optics and geometry. So geometry is where you can work on the angle. So if you need to straighten the image, if you need to scale it, it also has leveling and vertical or upright, where it'll assist in that grid. So anytime you do anything with geometry, it has that. So every time I work with a photo, I always start with optic first, and I'll click Enable Lens Correction. And then under the Change Profile, when you select the make of your camera lens, it'll automatically update. And this will actually take away any of the rounding from the camera lens, and it'll actually read how the photo was taken based on that lens. And then I'll go through and I will look at maybe the color mixer or the color grading. For this one, I kind of want to bump up the saturation, make it a bit more red. So you can drag it all the way up. If you drag it down, you can change the colors. You can do the same thing with vibrance. So that'll bring out more of the natural oranges in this photo, for example. So that's where I like saturation and vibrance when I'm editing a photo. I usually leave white balance as shot. The tint is going to change the actual shade of the color. So here all the way at the top, it looks more pink than red. Then we have temperature, which is the cold or the warmth. So on cold, it looks more bluish purple, and in warmth, it's more of a red orange. But I will always usually leave the white balance as shot. And then I'll usually try with my landscapes to sharpen the photo. And I'll also work with the light. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll click auto to see how the photo or how Lightroom wants me to edit. And then I'll go back and I'll change those settings to match what I actually want for the photo. So I don't necessarily want the exposure, but maybe I want to drop the contrast. And this is where I can kind of take what Lightroom does and mold it to what I would prefer. So one of the big things with Adobe Lightroom that I love is that there's no right or wrong way to use the filters and the settings in Lightroom on a photo. It's all about what you want to capture as the feeling from the photo. You know, you don't necessarily have to follow something by the book. You can just feel and go by instinct for what you want. And that's where your creativity can really come out in a photo. Messing or changing with the colors and the saturations, you can do anything you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously there are some instances like portraits or wedding photos where you have to be a bit more particular, but if you're doing this and editing a photo for you, then you don't have to worry about pleasing anyone else. You can just have the photo look the way you want. With the sharpening detail, one thing that's great is any change you make, it automatically updates on the photo. So you can zoom in, and as you see, I bumped up the sharpening for the detail on the photo, and it just brings more definition to the clouds, to the seagrass. But you can zoom in and see what it looks like close up, and then look at the whole image. With geometry, one of my favorite tools in here is actually the upright tool, so the guided upright tool. So this is where you can actually make sure that your photo is straight. So this photo that I'm editing has the horizon, but you only see a little bit of it. And by holding down the shift key on your keyboard, you can actually click and drag so that the photo is straight and nothing's at a weird angle. Now, this photo doesn't actually need to be straightened or leveled because I was using a tripod when I took this, so I had it completely level and flat. But if you took a photo and maybe your angle was slightly off, the horizon wasn't completely straight, if it's a landscape, you can always use the geometry feature to fix that. So continuing with the editing, you can also rotate. So if you wanted the image to be at a certain angle, you can use rotate in geometry to achieve that. And every time you use one of the settings in geometry, the grid is going to appear so you can actually see that. Another tool with Lightroom that's great is the healing brush. So as you can see in this photo, I actually have some spots. There were some spots on my lenses from water that I hadn't realized were there. So you can actually click the spot you want to fix and then click around the photo, and it'll actually pull the information, the data from that section that you've pulled so that you can see the fix of the spot. Now there is a tool down here at the bottom that has, it looks almost like a bracket, a line, and then a rectangle. So that is actually the before and after tool. So if you want to look at the original photo and then look at what you changed so you can compare them, you can actually do that live. So that is another thing with Lightroom. Any changes you make are not destructive changes. We talked about this in the video I posted for the Photoshop tutorial on making your photo a painting about non-destructive changes. Lightroom is a non-destructive way to clean up and fix your photos. So for this video, I've actually been using the Vimeo record because it was a way that I could record my screen and you guys could see all the videos. Now that I've finally hidden that bar, you can see down on the bottom the different tools that you can have and different ways that you can look at the photo. You also have other options on the toolbar for resetting edits, creating layer masks. Lightroom is great because it integrates completely with Photoshop. So in the drop down there was edit in Photoshop. So you can actually then pull this photo that you've added filters to into Photoshop so that you can edit it there. Now, if you don't want to edit the photo in Photoshop, in Lightroom we also have a crop tool. So what you can do is you can actually crop the image and you can straighten it. They have the aspect ratio that you can change. So if you decide to straighten it, if you've already leveled it, you wouldn't need to straighten it. But under aspect ratio, you can choose everything from a 1x1 square, if you're going to post this on Instagram, to other sizes. You also can move the image through and within the crop box to see where it falls. And if you don't like it, you can always hit reset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 1x1 crop, and I'm going to put the sun off to the left side of the photo because I don't actually want the flagpole that was there in this photo. I want to focus on just the sun. And you can always change the crop overlay to see the golden ratio. So this is where you can make sure that the object you want as the center is the object in the center. So using the golden ratio, I did bring it back so that the sun was the focal point. And then under File, Export, this is where you can export your photo as an image. And it'll pull up the settings. So you can choose the file type, the size and the dimensions, as well as the quality. So I want this to be full size in terms of dimensions. And you can also change that. So this is where you can actually customize even the export, but I'm going to stick with full size. I want the quality at 100% and I'm leaving it as a JPEG. Under more options, it does have more detailed things, as if you want to change the name, if you want to change any of the metadata, and then you click export one photo and you can choose the folder that it gets saved into. So I'm just gonna go and pick a folder for us, and I'm actually gonna put this back in the folder with the other shots so I can go back and look at it again. So this is the photo that we started with at the beginning of this tutorial. Sunrise at the Jersey Shore. There's some spots and I wasn't really happy with the colors on the photo I took. And this is the photo that we now have after working on it in Adobe Lightroom. So just by 10-15 minutes in Lightroom, you can see the vast difference between the original photo and the final product. This is why I love Lightroom, because it's still the same photo, but you've actually brought new life to it. So guys, that is our Lightroom tutorial for today. I hope you learned something from it, and I hope you can now go and experiment with Lightroom on your photos. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comments below. What I'm going to try and do is any questions you guys have, I'm going to try and answer them either at the beginning or the end of each tutorial video. So what I'll do is I'll pick one question and then answer it in the next video. As always, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you guys next time.